back to you. I want to turn now to Tripp Baird. Tripp, you know, you're very familiar with what goes on in the Senate. Now it's up to Harry Reid, it's up to Mitch McConnell, the two leaders in the Senate, to try to craft something that they think they can get by the Senate. How likely is it that there could be a bill that would pass the Senate and the House? After all, that is the problem we've had all along.
Well, first, we haven't seen any details of this package, so we're talking completely off the cuff here, but we know it's not going to be at 250. I think Harry Reid's got problems with folks from New York like Chuck Schumer and Dick Durbin and Dianne Feinstein out in California, where 250 is going to be a big pill for them to swallow. So I think it's going to be up somewhere around 400 or 500. But people ought to understand, this is not fixing the problem. This is only creating another cliff we're going to have 60 days, 90 days down the road. Because even if you were to say you were going to increase taxes on 250 and above, it doesn't fix the problem. Like you said earlier, I think Rich said the debt ceiling's out of the deal, so that's going to be another deadline that Congress is going to have to hit. I think everybody needs to get comfortable with the fact that we're going to have these kind of stopgap, last-second deal-cutting things for the next year, 60 days. I mean, this is how Congress is going to work.
Well, let's get Tyler in here, too, a Republican strategist. Is there any common ground that can be found here? I mean, this seems to me a last-ditch effort. And let me tell you, when it was announced today that there was going to be this meeting at 3 o'clock, expectations went through the roof. I think people thought something really big was going to happen. At the end of the day, the president is saying, I'm modestly optimistic. Maybe we can do something by December 31st. What do you make of it?
Yeah, he's modestly optimistic about no new changes here. You know, the country needs a leader, and that, no matter what party you're from, that's what we need in the President of the United States. And we've got a president that gets a bunch of people together and says, hey, let's talk about the problem, but then doesn't take a leadership role. Instead, he just shovels the problem over to Harry Reid and says, hey, see if you can figure this out with the Republicans. And you know what we're going to find? We're going to find that Harry Reid and McConnell aren't really going to be able to come up with legislation that either can really pass, and then we go over the cliff. And I agree with Tripp. This just kicks the can just a little bit further.
All right.
And part of the problem is we have no leadership here.
All right. Let's get Rich Edson back into this again. Rich, my next question is, what happens next? Do we just wait for Reid and McConnell to come up with something? When might it be voted on? When might we have more of these meetings?
Now, the play out from here, Jerry, is basically Senate leaders will meet tonight. Their staffs will meet tonight. They'll work tomorrow. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says he's suspending regular floor business on the Senate floor for tomorrow so leadership can kind of work on this. And senators won't be distracted by other things. They're working on other issues, or have been for the last couple of days. At that point, probably sometime Sunday morning, they'll have to make the decision as to whether or not they've actually got enough votes, or they've come up with something that can actually pass the House or the Senate. And if that's the deal and they do reach some type of skeleton or compromise that they can sell to Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate, they'll begin that process once the leadership is signed off. The timing from then gets a little longer when you consider the House has a rule that says any bill that they vote on must be posted online, must be public for 3 days. The Senate has a number of procedural hurdles. You know, the Senate's kind of strange. You can get something done in unanimous consent, what it's known as, and pretty much walk on the floor and walk off and it's passed, or you can deal with about 3.5 days of parliamentary procedure. So it's unclear as to how far that could take.
We don't have 3 days.
We don't. So it seems at this point, Jerry, you know, it's likely we're going to surpass the New Year's deadline, but still, if you've got an agreement in the works, it helps out.
We're showing live pictures of the Senate floor right now, and you can see there are people there, and they're obviously talking to each other and trying to figure out what to do. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. I've got to tell you, I've covered the markets, I've covered the economy for a long time, and the kind of thing we're seeing here, this last-minute stopgap effort to try to get something done, reminds me of something the president said in his press conference. He said, outside of Washington, people don't seem to understand why this is a repeat problem, that is, that Congress can't make a decision, and that regular people meet their deadlines. Tripp, to you, are you confident we can get something done here, or do you think December 31st will come and go and we'll have nothing in hand?
Look, I think the president's sanctimonious lecture that he wants to give Congress about not doing their job. He needs to put a mirror on himself on this as well. Look, he knows that there could be a deal. If he put something on the table, and look, not that Heritage Action would support this, but he could put something, whether it's change CPI or you could do something with the eligibility age for Medicare, something that will really, truly, fundamentally reform Medicare, premium support. He would get a deal he would get enough votes in the Senate to pass something easily, and he had some real fundamental spending cuts. The problem is the tax increases happen immediately, the spending cuts get kicked down, and they never end up happening. And that's always been the bear trap that Republicans have gotten themselves in, and I don't think they're going to fall for it. The president thinks he can just sit there and blame them for whatever happens, but I don't think anyone's going to remember Mitch McConnell or John Boehner's name 10 years from now. They're going to remember, if we go over this cliff and the economy tanks, this was on Obama's watch, and he's going to get some of the blame. I think they think they're going to escape any blame, but the true fact is they really do want to go over the cliffs. They want this revenue.
Well, and to that point, look, regular Americans are going to see the impacts of this beginning with their first paycheck in January, because Social Security payroll tax will go back up, and we're going to see the changes coming on immediately, quickly and fast. The average American family will pay $3,500 additional each and every year in taxes, and that's just people in the middle class. That number goes higher quickly. Tyler, to you, do you think that the Republicans are going to cave here? Do you think that the Senate will be able to come up with a compromise even inside its offices?
I think politically going over the cliff is the best scenario for Republicans. It's not the best scenario for the country, but at least if we go over the cliff, then anything that they agree to looks like a tax cut. And I think that could be the scenario that we're looking for. But everything that's been done for the past several weeks has all been smoke and mirrors anyway. So, this is just another day of the same old thing. And I think you're right. I think the normal person, the people who look at their paychecks every week, every 2 weeks, every month, they're going to know who the problem child here is. And it isn't the Senate. It is not Congress. It's the lack of true leadership in the President of the United States.
Right. Rich, to you, we've been waiting for this all day long, right? We had cameras at the White House watching people exit. Do you think this comes as a disappointment to most people, the resolution of today and of that meeting, or do you think something good can come from it?
Well, I think after you heard from leadership and from the president, and when you got the first reports, and we had reported that the administration official had said the president had basically just put on the table what he'd been reiterating last week in a speech, and what was basically what he had put on throughout the entire campaign, just a scaled-down version of it, it didn't look all that good. But as you've now got this assignment for the two Senate leaders to get together and try to hammer something out, they see this path forward, and aides have seen this path forward on the Hill for the past couple of weeks, kind of the skeleton deal that we've just been talking about right now. This is pretty much the only shot that we've got to avoid the cliff at this stage. And so the fact that they are at least giving it another shot over the next 24 hours, there's no guarantees here, but I'd say this is probably about as good of a result from this meeting as you could have expected.
Well, I love ending on an optimistic note. That's certainly good news. I want to thank my guests here, Tripp, Tyler, Rich Edson, as always, for your fine analysis. Thanks for your help tonight, guys. Really appreciate it.